Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you to the host for having me. And, today is especially significant because having met many of the teachers and the students yesterday, I really felt that the topic of this conference is a wonderful kind of platform for exploring for myself as well, where I've been and where I'm going in my career as an architect. So, whilst the title of today's talk is Cybertecture, a New Paradigm of Architecture, I would like to really frame today's talk as a little kind of self-commentary of my own life and what I've struggled and thought about and where I've kind of arrived at and where I continue to hope to go. So paradox to paradigm, wow, what a grand and great topic. Paradox to paradigm perhaps means the same thing that we all pursue every day in our lives. Whether we're an architect or whether we're a private citizen, we are thinking about what our world and our lives means in the significance of today and what we can do in our lives to really affect a positive change to that. And as an architect, I'm continuously struggling and thinking and trying to find the reason for my own existence. And very much the results of that have been the projects of my studio. We have now been on this pursuit of paradigm to paradox and paradox to paradigm continuously for the last 17 years. And it's been a really tough struggle. But in that struggle, we have found certain things which we feel have started to change what we conventionally call architecture, and we call that cybertecture. And it's been an exciting journey where we've been able to discover new forms of design, new spaces, new technologies, and new ideas, which we really like to share with the world. But perhaps the first paradox I'd like to explore with you is the paradox of reality. And there's no more real than where we come from. I was born in Hong Kong in 1970, and these are pictures from Hong Kong at that time. Hong Kong is an example of a place created out of sheer hard architecture. For me as a child, I remember it as an architecture of the blacks and the gray. It was concrete, built out of nothing. My parents were refugees who moved to Hong Kong, escaping the communists in China, and they worked slavishly in factories to bring me up. Whilst we lived in this concrete jungle, I also felt the power of architecture. I felt the ability for man to create a great community for all through the sheer act of building. And that reality sticks with me today, that I believe in whatever we design, we are changing the lives of the people inside, living and working inside our buildings. And that paradox of reality changed into a paradox of belief. And that belief came one day for this 7-year-old child, myself, sitting at home just by chance, turning on the television and seeing a movie on TV which was called The Fountainhead. For those who don't know, The Fountainhead is a story, a novella in a novel called The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, made into a movie and acted by Gary Cooper, the character of Howard Rourke. Howard Rourke is an architect that came in an era of classicism, but he was a modernist, and he wanted to change the world with his grand vision of modern design. As a child, watching his story of struggle through his career, overcoming seemingly unavoidable odds, and also in the end, championing and succeeding to change the world by building the world's tallest building, it gave me this sense of the world as a place where belief can drive our vision, where the paradox that we face every day in the uncertainties of belief are there for us to challenge in order for us to continue our own journeys of our own visions and making them come true. So I told my parents after seeing this movie that I want to be an architect. And they were surprised, but they were also happy because by chance, the paradox of belief have given me the initial clarity as to how I wanted to run my life. That led to the start of the journey to understand the paradox of dreams. And perhaps the one person that really catalyzed my own dreams was in my own education at the Bartlett. I was very lucky to come across my teacher, Peter Cook, who was mentioned in the previous keynote. Peter is an extraordinary teacher whose belief in education doesn't come from the conventional rote learning or the ability to tell students what is right and what is wrong. His ability was to inspire the students to believe in themselves, to search within themselves what they believed in and what they dream about. In fact, his life up to that moment when I was studying with him in the early 90s was still about dreams. He, as an architect and part of the very famous group of architects called Archigram, were architects of dreams. They believed that cities could walk, buildings could fly, and perhaps even go off the planet into the space. And having a teacher like that really destroyed any difficulty that I had as a student about believing in my own dreams. And so on graduating, I did all my usual obligations of passing my exams, going for my professional qualification, and became an architect. But there started perhaps at that moment the biggest paradox of all was the paradox of the architect. Now, up to that time, I had believed architects are trained and destined to change the world. My teacher told me so. Howard Rourke told me so when I was 7 years old. But when I entered into practice as an architect, as a very junior architect in practices, I didn't feel that at all. I felt I was mired in a system that was antiquated, where pencil and paper struggled to keep up with the challenges that we were facing in the built environment. I felt I was part of a bureaucracy. I felt I was part of a politics. And I felt that the true essence of being an architect was slightly lost in all of that. Every day, the buildings that we were making at that time in the big firms I was working at were architectures that were at odds with nature, with the very difficult conditions that people were finding themselves living in Hong Kong, the affordability of buildings, the availability of quality space, the idea of being more sustainable. All of these were very much lost in the early days of my career and made me very, very depressed. So the paradox was there. You had prepared yourself for a world of dreams, a life of discovery, and you've entered into a profession that profoundly disappointed you. And so I needed another paradox to free myself from this. And I think I was very lucky, and I always keep using this word luck because I think our journeys in life are very much guided by our moments of luck. So late in the 90s, new thinking started to arrive into the very lifestyles of all of us. And the paradox of new thinking freed me from the paradox of an architect. And that paradox of new thinking really was this sense that the world had moved on dramatically. Our technological world has started to link our societies under a fabric which was different from the conventional concrete, steel, and glass that we know of as architecture. The world on the left was everything that we had understood about the world up to the end of the 20th century. But by the start of the 21st century, the world is very much represented by the planet on the right, which is that we see our planet as a place which is created out of space that is connected no longer just in the physical realm, but also as a connected society of virtual space. And the very power of this new fabric, this power of new thinking, the ability to understand the world both as hardware and software, opened up for me the opportunity for new thinking as an architect. And I felt that at last we had arrived in a journey of renaissance where the architect could start becoming a cybertech, somebody who could deal with the bits and the bytes, the electrons, the intelligence that could be created from computers, writing code, attaching a different kind of scale to thinking about materials, both from the nano level to the macro level, to open up our minds to the possibilities of building the world differently. And so I said to myself, let's do this. Let's quit your job. Let's take this challenge on and start my company. And at the age of 30, in the year 2000, I quit a job, took my limited savings with me, and started my own company. And I took on the challenge of the design of this kind of dream of cybertecture. And there starts the paradox of design. Design had up to that moment very much been an analog world. We carried our pencils in our pocket and we drew our sketches in our sketchbooks, and we really were limited by the tools that was available to us. But by the year 2000, we could start to equip our studios with new technologies. The technology, of course, of the digital, where the same line that was drawn by graphite is now the line of bits and bytes. And that line can carry so much more information than the graphite pencil could before. It could carry the information of color, of texture, of specification, of intent, of interaction. So for the first 5 to 10 years of my studio, we explored a lot of new tools in order to expand our capabilities as a studio. We encouraged everyone in our office to abandon the analog world, to work entirely in the digital world. We draw on tablets. We model in virtual reality. We draw our drawings in BIM. And as much as we can, we try to discover the potentials behind these. And the sheer complexities of what the world needs today are very much where these tools and skills are leading us to achieve. We know that our buildings and our architecture are very much now akin to aircraft and to space stations. They are layer upon layer of complex systems in order to empower the people that's going to be inside the cybertecture to live and work in a safe and enhanced way. And we couldn't design this before in the traditional ways. Our tools and our thoughts could not keep up with this complexity. And to see this complexity, our office is really embracing both in virtual reality and augmented reality to open our eyes to the opportunities to look in, to look from below, to look from within, to zoom in, to zoom out, to fragment, and to share our visions with each other, both within the studio and our clients, to see the possibilities of the new that we cannot see in the conventional way. And the ability also to think beyond, that whatever we create today may not be able to be built today, but soon will be able to be built in the near future. The appreciation for the industry that is changing as rapidly as we are, that construction can no longer be built in the analog ways of the past, where workers sleep on site and people are risking their lives in a dangerous environment. Robots and the ability to print buildings will change the very nature of what we can deliver as a physical object on site. So this is leading to a paradigm of a new architecture. And I'd like to show you a few examples of what I mean by this new cybertecture. In the first 5 years of my career, I almost went bankrupt. And because nobody would give me a project to do, nobody understood, nobody really gave me the chance to enact what I wanted to do. But after 5 years, luck again came. And the first opportunity I had was in competition against Zaha Hadid and Norman Foster for a building in Dubai. I knew I was up against very strong opposition. They are icons of our industry. But I felt the hope that my cybertecture could do just that little something that they couldn't do. I couldn't design something as sophisticated as them. So what I did, after being briefed by the client on the flight back from Dubai, just happened by luck again. I was listening to my iPod. And the iPod gave me an idea that a simple building could enact a new kind of cybertecture beyond its physical space, but be very much like an iPod. An iPod that can be programmed with the contents of your life, with the preferences of your lifestyle. A building, an architecture can also do so. So using this idea, I created this building. It's called the Pad. Initially, it was called the iPad. And in 2006, I entered this into competition against those two icons of architecture. And by luck again, I won the competition. It really, for me, changed, thank you. It really, for me, validated many, many things in my life up to that moment. That something simple but sophisticated through technology was starting to change architecture. Something about a young man's belief starting at the age of 7 could come true, even though you're up against pretty big odds. This building is a 286-unit apartment building in Business Bay in Dubai. And the building is quite simple. It carries the same form as the iPod. And in fact, it leans at 6.5 degrees physically, just like an iPod would do in a docking station. But the entire building is equipped with a level of spatial intelligence that had not been done at that time before. So we take the analogy of an iPod, and we made every space in this building programmable to the needs of the user. And in the very early marketing materials, this message was carried through, that real estate was no longer just about buying space in a building. It was also buying an electronically enhanced lifestyle. So these posters, you can see the architecture shown above, but below the banner is actually showing all of the different apps that you could download into the building as a resident inside. So very much so, a building was no longer a building. A building was very much like this. You know, this came several years later, that a smartphone also had an infrastructure of downloadable apps. Why not an architecture becoming a cybertecture that you can download apps and changing the space? Apps including virtual reality, entertainment, health, ways to keep in touch with your family, are all apps available to you in this building. And so how did it manifest? So these are some photos of the apartments inside the building. So on the left-hand side, one of the apps that we have is a virtual reality app that allows the space to be seemingly enlarged using virtual reality. These apartments range from 600 square feet to about 1,000 square feet, not very large. But we wanted people to feel that they were getting an architecture that could go beyond, that the physical space was just the first step of their experience, and that going beyond that physical space was possible. So you can see on the walls, there's a series of animatronic blinds that come down, and you can stream up to 24 live locations from around the world directly to the space of your room. So you can get the real-time feed from Tokyo, Hong Kong, New York, London, Los Angeles, Sydney, to the walls of your room and see it in real time, seemingly transporting your physical space to an augmented presence, a kind of dislocated reality to those locations around the world. You can also link those cameras of your other homes around the world or your families around the world to your space here, and therefore connecting the virtual and the real, enlarging your spatial experience. Then the picture on the right-hand side, you've seen the apartment change color, and this is, of course, using LED lighting. And the app that responds to this is that we say the color of the space is entirely intelligently connected to you. So you can connect it to information, you can connect it to your phone, etc. So I'll give you two examples. The lighting on the right-hand side, one client of ours connects it to the stock market. So when a certain stock starts to crash in the market, the apartment starts to change color, changes red, and tells you better sell your stock rather quickly. Or the color can respond to communication. So let's say this. Let's say your girlfriend is calling you on your phone and you don't want your family to know. Your apartment could slightly change red just to let you know, be careful, don't take the call. But perhaps the most powerful of all the apps is an app that cares about people. And we saw the bathroom no longer just as the bathroom where we have to go every day, but the space that we can start to use cybertecture to keep people healthier. So the bathroom was designed with a mirror that could be integrated with technologies that can monitor and track your health. And as an architectural firm, we were starting to walk into the realm of technological development. I said to the client, I said, okay, we can't find this on the market, but we can build this. They said, really? You can build it? You do it. So I took all of the fees I had made from the building and started the company to develop this technology. And this is it. So this is a real and now available internet-empowered mirror designed and made by James Hill Cybertecture. And this is not an animation. This is a real film. The lady in the film is my wife, so just to prove it is real. And the interactivity that we can gain from the mirror is what we call a digital mirror into a digital life. So you're really extending the functionality of the space into a device on the wall that connects you to a whole range of functionalities, such as analyzing your health, using algorithms we've written, and then visually being able to show that to you as you are using the bathroom. We really see this is the next level of architectural component or building material, that every object that we are now putting into a piece of architecture can be connected to the internet and certainly be part of what we call the Internet of Things, that our buildings and the fabric that we build them on are much more intelligent and much more empowered. So this is the building, the pad. And a little side story I can tell you is that originally it was called the iPad. And when we launched it in 2007, it got a lot of press. And we got a letter from Apple, not from Steve Jobs himself, but we got a letter from Apple who said, congratulations, very nice project. We heard a lot of news about it. But would you mind relinquishing the name back to us? Because about a year later, they launched the iPad. So we said, okay, they're a very big company. Let's not fight them on this. So we gave them the name back. But I secretly want to tell people at Apple, I was the one who made the first iPad. So that's the first paradigm I want to share with you. Now let's move on to the second. Paradigm of a new way to build. You know, Howard Rourke in that movie said that we don't need to still continue to build in stone. In that movie, he said, concrete was the world of the future. For me, I think concrete is now the stone of the past. We need to look at the new future. So this has been a project that I want to do to change the way we see how we build our buildings. This project is called the OwlPod. It's a real project. The photos you see on the left and the right are of the real object we built. The OwlPod is a robotically manufactured, ultra-light piece of architecture, almost entirely crafted out of aluminum. It has an integrated design approach where the entire systems inside this house is pre-engineered into it, just like you pre-engineer the innards of an Apple laptop. It has smart systems, it has a built-in interiors of living space, kitchen, and toilet. But most importantly, it is extremely light and extremely portable. It is 450 square feet, the equivalent size of a container box. I made this as an experimental project where I wanted to see, for real, what it would be like to build a building block that could be built not by people on the construction site, but one that becomes a flexible Lego block of the future. So this house can be brought from the factory onto a site and installed in less than 2 hours. Now, as a building block, it opens up great new possibilities. So the next step in this project is to do this, and we are planning to target to do this in Chicago. So this is what we are planning to build in Chicago. It's a mid-rise, high-rise building where almost the entire occupiable space of the building are created out of those same OwlPods, plugged onto the building. So this building, you can say, is again a kind of physical manifestation of the kind of updatability and the flexibility of apps in a smartphone. Each of those different color alpods could represent a different kind of architecture, a different kind of space. Some could be residential, some can be commercial, some can be cultural, some could be even for education. And for the first time, you start to have an architecture that could respond to the changing needs of society. If there's one thing that I feel in the kind of paradox of modern life, it's this need for us to continue to change and for our cities to be very much more flexible than they are currently. So this is an architecture that we hope steps into that direction. But you know, we never ever stop where we are. If there is one thing true about life, it continues. So should ideas. So phase 3 of this project, we've already started with a large Chinese company, is we plan to make the Alpod do more than this, and this is what we're planning to do. We are planning to build large-scale flying, self-flying autonomous Alpods that are able to deliver this architecture not on the ground in the conventional way, not by lorries, not by creating traffic, but entirely from the sky. Why not? We already have giant Airbuses with hundreds of people on board, flying at 42,000 feet at 600 knots. Why not our buildings? So we're in the process right now of prototyping this at 1 to 10 scale, and we hope to have a working proof of concept within the next 24 months. These buildings will be a new kind of architecture. It'll be like making real what Peter Cook dreamed about as part of Archigram, for a city to be able to fly, to be able to adapt to different weather conditions and climatic change, to respond to disaster relief situations, and perhaps respond to the need of our urban population in a way that is so much faster than conventional construction. We really see this not as a dream, but really just the next step in what architects can achieve. And I hope the next time I come back to Nagpur, maybe I don't need to be on a jet light flight. Maybe I can fly in one of my Alpods and arrive here. So only 2 more paradigms left. The next paradigm I want to tell you about is the paradigm of a new hope. You know, I think back to many, many years ago, that fundamental belief that perhaps we are destined to do something, and that we should do something good for our people, for our planet. And having hope is so very, very important. How can we deliver an architecture of hope? So last year, I took it upon myself to do something different again. This time, not to do something technologically empowered, but something which is creative, modest, and humble. I took water pipe, large diameter concrete water pipes that is commonly used in the city underground as storm water drainage. And I wanted to create one of the cheapest houses that we can create, that we can really empower the people who can't afford to live to be able to live in a decent house. The project is called Alpod. And this is the real Alpod. You might have seen it in the press in the last month. It's become quite popular in the global press. The Alpod is an attempt for me to say, okay, you know, we can be conventional, but we can also be innovative. And by innovative, we can look at traditionally what we can use again. So the humble water pipe is reused here and converted inside with a 100 square foot space, with a living area, with a folding bed, with a small kitchen, toilet, etc. All for less than $15,000 US. And to be able to do this en masse and in a very quick way to relieve the suffering of many people who don't have a place to live. And to have a dream that we can take this further and start to build fast buildings in all places around the world to help the disenfranchised, the young who cannot afford to live in the city, to find a decent home to live. And then to be able to activate those spaces in our cities which are now being wasted, whether it's spaces under highway flyovers or the crevices between buildings, to have an architecture that on a pixel level can reactivate and make those spaces not wasted. I think it's a really kind of exciting new dawn for architecture. So I'm really, really proud of this project. I'm really, really proud that I managed to get myself to think about something different for a new hope for people. Last paradigm I want to share with you is the paradigm of a new planet. So from the small ideas, let's think about the really big ideas. We won a competition about 5 years ago to build a new city in the United Arab Emirates. All of our competitors were large architectural practices. They had built big cities before. So they proposed high-rises and streets and districts and things like this. And so in typical James Law fashion, we won't do that. We'll do something different. So we entered a design, which I think at that time was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but we had worked it all out with our engineering partners, and we proposed this. So this is a city that is called the Technosphere, and it compresses 10 million square feet of constructed space into a micro-compact planet on the site. And what this does is it takes all of the facilities that is traditionally in about 20 buildings and compacts it so that it doesn't need to have streets. It doesn't require the need to commute from building to building. And it saves the amount of material to build the same city by 40%. It has a shape which maximizes its internal volume but minimizes its surface area. And it uses only a limited number of repeatable parts to build this city. All of them rewrites the books on how we are building cities today. By compacting this particular city, we open up the space around and entirely let it be replenished with nature and parks, and shares that out with the 40,000 people living and working inside this technosphere. The project was awarded the winner, and we started construction in 2009. Unfortunately, it got hit by the economic tsunami, so the project is on hold at the moment. But once it is built, I think it will really change the game into what we believe urbanism is about. Inside, there's a giant 100-meter tall Garden of Eden, where we have wonderful activities for the society to share in a kind of chasm of seeing each other's activities and seeing and sharing space. And on the surface of this technosphere, we have this wonderful idea to shield the building against the hot Middle East sun by using nature. But we not only do so by creating these sky gardens and sky forests on the surface of this man-made planet, but we also will replenish them with different plant life and animal life from different regions of our own planet, so that the inhabitants of this technosphere will be able to travel from forest to forest and get a glimpse of the beautiful nature that surrounds our real planet. So those are just a few examples of what we do. I can't say every project of ours is that innovative, but we really truly believe that on some projects we must push our limits and to go beyond, for the paradox to become the paradigm, and those to open up the new opportunities for mankind. So I wrote a little text to conclude today what I wanted to say, and I want to share this with you, and it's been specifically written for you. Our journeys have never been an easy one. To seek, to strive, to create, to search within the paradox, that is our human condition, to find our own paradigm that empowers in each of us the insight to change the world. That is my journey. That is my cybertecture. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.